Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. Today's webinar will be about making an animated short film in Clip Studio Paint presented by Manuel López. Before we begin the webinar, there are some housekeeping items that we'd like to go through. The webinar will be approximately 1 hour long. All attendees will be muted. Question and answer session will be during the last 15 minutes of the webinar. Attendees can ask questions in the GoToWebinar question box right away. Due to time, not all questions will be answered. The webinar will be recorded. The recording will be shared on social media and will be sent via email to all registrants and attendees. The panelists for this webinar are Fahim Nias, Joanna Brower, Mario Quiñones, myself, and Manuel López. For those of you who are joining us for the very first time or have never heard about Clip Studio Paint, Clip Studio Paint is your all-in-one solution for stunning, ready-to-publish illustrations, comics, manga, and animations. Learn more at clipstudio.net/n and graphicsly.com. And with that, we'd like to pass the reins of the webinar to Manuel and his presentation, making an animated short film in Clip Studio Paint. Thank you so much.
All right, is it working? Okay, first of all, I want to thank the Graphicsly team for giving me this opportunity to show you my animation. What's up, guys? I hope you're having a fantastic Friday. My name is Manuel López. I'm known online as Manu Mercurial, and I'm a passionate 2D animator and illustrator. And I've worked with clients like Cartoon Network and DreamworksTV, among others. And currently, I'm working in Lackadaisy's animated pilot that you gotta look out for. It's gonna be amazing. So I recently graduated from animation college, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about my process making an entire short film on Clip Studio Paint. I hope you will find some useful stuff for your own animations. All right, first let me get this straight out of the way. You have no idea how many times I've been asked in the past months, wait, can you really do animation in Clip Studio? Yes, absolutely you can. Not only that, but you can also work your entire pipeline, as you can see here, on Clip Studio Paint, and we're going to go through that. But yeah, we're gonna start with a little trailer for my short film in case you have not watched it. So the short is called Memories for Sale, and it tackles how, since the beginning of 2D animation, animators used perspective drawing to emulate camera movements and rotations in drone space, right? So yeah, everything was completely done in Clip Studio Paint. You can watch it in CG Meetup's YouTube channel. Again, Memories for Sale. All right, so before getting started, I have two goals today. Of course, one is to show you how you can use Clip Studio to do the entire pipeline, right? To make frame-by-frame animation. But I also want to show you this. You might get a little scared. So this drawing over here is not a drawing that I gave my parents to so they can put up in the refrigerator when I was little. This is an assignment I did for my college education when I was in an animation school. I've always loved animation, but when I was little, I watched The Lion King and I watched Toy Story, and for me, they were exactly the same. I didn't realize one was drawn and the other wasn't. And I love studying the stories of every artist that I adore. But when you do that, you realize all of them have something in common, as they all started drawing since they were little. But I want to tell you guys, this is not my story at all. I picked up a pencil for the first time when I was 19 years old. And when I got to animation school, I was first of all in a 3D program, and I was intimidated by the level the other artists around me had. And now with the internet, even more, right? So if you have felt the same, you know, as a defense mechanism, you tend to convince yourself that you don't need to learn how to draw. And that's what happened to me. So I went through my whole animation education thinking, nah, I don't need to learn how to draw. I'm in 3D. I don't need to learn how to draw. But it was just, I was scared to face the fact that I didn't know how to draw. So I got to the end of my animation education, and I was faced with a choice, which was, what am I going to do for a graduation short film? We were able to do a 2D short film or a 3D short film. And then I looked at this question as something more important to me, which was, what am I really passionate about? What do I want to do when I get out there to the industrial force, let's call it, and what do I want to dedicate myself to? And I realized the answer was 2D animation, 2D frame by frame animation. And the only reason I wasn't doing it was because of this, because I was afraid to learn how to draw. But I decided to give myself the opportunity to just face my fears, bite the bullet, right? And try to start learning how to draw. So this is the first storyboard the first storyboard for my short film. The reason the drawings are this sketchy is not because I was working fast. This is the best I could do for character animation or drawing back then. So you might be asking yourself, how did I go from this to what we just watched, right? To this teaser. Well, I'm going to talk a little bit about my process. So it wasn't easy, it wasn't fast, that's a given. But the good thing about it is there's no secret. I just did the things that all your teachers tell you to do, right? Work, like draw from life, perspective drawing. I know these things are tedious and are a little boring, but seriously, guys, it's the only way to get better. And for me, there's something really positive in it. And it's the fact that if you put in the work, you get results. There's no secret to it. So yeah, I just going a little bit over what I'm showing here. So a little structural drawing, then I can get into anatomy when I can portray my characters with volume. I can get it to the level where you want to get it. Then study painting and color and illustration. So you can then study characters and how to create volumes in them, right? Then you can apply this to your own characters, all that you've learned, and the result is this, which you have already seen, right? The short film. So if you're wondering, is there a shortcut to get better? Absolutely there is, and it's studying fundamentals. If you paid attention to the content that I just showed you, there was no fan art in there. And I'm not saying you shouldn't do fan art. Of course I did my share of like fun stuff just for me, because that's why we do art, right? Just to have fun. But I use this type of things as more of a diagnostic or as a test to see how much I was improving and the things I was learning. So that's why what I suggest you guys should do. If you feel like me, if you are afraid of tackling your weaknesses, I hope you can do it, because it's so worth it. Once you learn something, it's yours and nobody can take it away. And that's incredibly powerful. I would even go as far as saying is an addictive feeling. And yeah, basically if you have problems drawing hands, for example, you have two options: either never draw characters with hands or just starting to draw hands. That's what I suggest you do. And yeah, the end goal is this. This is a teaser of another project I'm working on. This is a personal project. I wish I could show you more, but yeah, it's coming your way, guys. This is our goal. We get to create worlds. We get to create our own universes and populate them with our characters and tell our stories. And that's, for me, it's incredibly worth it. All right. Okay, let's go. Let's get back to Clip Studio Paint. As you can see here, yeah, this is all animated in Clip Studio. I think we're going to start with the pre-production for a short film. I want to go a little bit over the things you would do to create a film. So hopefully you can do your animations too. Okay. Okay. So first of all, you got to work on your story, of course. Storytelling is not, people look at storytelling as something that you are either good or bad at it, and don't realize it's also a skill. just like drawing. And I hear so many people saying, oh no, I'm not a creative person, I've never had good ideas, so I just couldn't think of that. Storytelling, just like drawing, is something you need to practice. It's the most important craft we can practice, because that's the reason we create animation, right? If we're working in entertainment, we gotta tell good stories. So yeah, guys, if I don't know why people think that creativity is something that dries down, but it's actually quite the opposite. The more you do it, the better you get at it. So I suggest you guys start learning about storytelling and doing practices, right? Writing a lot. So this was the first. As if you've seen my short film, it's a little. It's not a chronological order story, so it has a lot of going back and forth within timelines. So yeah, I was working on that first, getting my story working up front, and then I can jump into my storyboard. And there's something really important here. This is the storyboard, but it's also the color script. And I want to tell you guys, the color is also a main character in your story. Lighting, right? Even the composition, they have all to be seen as characters, because you get to tell a story with color. So yeah, never look at color as just something that's there. Use it as a character, because in animation is one of the most powerful tools you have at your disposal. Yeah, once I had the idea for the short film set, I had how every scene was gonna, where it's going, the camera is gonna be, what the action is gonna be, then I can start working on my backgrounds. I want to add that I did this entire short film by myself, so I had to do a little bit of everything. Basically, this was the first background that I painted. Again, I was going through the process that I just shown you parallel to this short film. So yeah, the first background I painted, when I saw it, I was like, holy, right? For me, it was incredible. At that point, I was just studying perspective animation. I looked at this and I thought, this is perfect. This cannot be beaten. But as I studied more and more, and especially when I started using reference to know where I wanted to get, and I started studying that reference, I began to realize, okay, there's things that can definitely be improved. So this is something I suggest you can also do. Whoops. You can grab an here I grabbed an animation screen cap, anime screen cap, but it can be anything you would like, a reference of what you want your short film to be, and then try studying that. I want to make, like, this is not just drawing on top of this. You can see the perspective is a little different. I tried to build up the same background from the start, and by doing this, I learned so much that I could apply to my own backgrounds, right? So this is a background for my short film, and you can definitely see the influence of what I just learned there. Okay, so when I was doing these studies, I'm going to show you a little bit. At first, you tend to draw, if you look at the values here, yeah, there's a lot of range between the whites and the blacks, but it's also pretty grayish, right? I stayed mostly on the grays, but as I did more and more of these studies, I began to realize a camera doesn't work like that. A camera actually has a pretty broad range of colors. So we have to be able to use values all the way from complete darkness to total white, and that actually makes our scenes way better, right? It looks way better than this. This is one I know. Obviously, the drawing has improved a lot, but this is one of the main difference between this and this is if you make this black and white. We can do it fairly quickly. Right, this is basically a lot of grays where, whoop, this is way too small. Here we do have a range from absolute darkness to complete white, and it just makes it look way more realistic, right? Because this was one of my goals with my project, to try and imitate a camera, right? Moving on, so we're working on the backgrounds. I'm going to talk a little bit about the process painting the backgrounds. So what I did was basically, obviously, drawing the background with a perspective grid. We're going to go through that, but then filling in the local values that I wanted for the things. So you can see here, there's a suggestion of where the light is, but this only local values. And then I colored it. How did I color it? Well, we're gonna open a scene. There's a powerful tool in Clip Studio called gradient maps, and a lot of people have not heard of it. So yeah, we're gonna go a little bit after of why the characters are looking like that. For now, let's just turn them off. We don't need them right now. And we can leave it at that. Okay, here's the background. Okay, so gradient maps basically are, well, you can see a little bit of red. I didn't know there. Are basically, let me open the tool. You can tell what colors your black and white image to use. So basically I said, turn my black and white into this sort of tones, and this is the result I get. Of course, I used several, so I was doing a little editing, so you have to play with this. But why did I use this pipeline with gradient maps? It's because I wanted to be able to use the same drawing but different lightings to it. So I could get away with using the same background over and over again, just changing the here we go. Just changing the lighting. It's not as simple as just like playing with hue and saturation. That will not work, but playing with the gradient maps will work. So that way I got away with around 40% of my backgrounds in my short film are the same drawing, but a different lighting. So yeah, I highly recommend using gradient maps. Okay, let's talk a little bit about how I painted the backgrounds. So here we have what I did first, as I told you, was using the local values of the scene. Then I painted the highlights where I wanted the highlights to be. So you can see here, the values I'm painting are basically white, trying to render out the scene. Then I painted the shadows. And when you put those two together, you get this, right? It looks a little bit rendered. And then I used the gradient map, and this is the result, right? Functioning background. This allows us to do things like this. So there was a scene where we actually changed from one lighting to another. I'm gonna open the timeline here. Yeah, we're gonna get into character animation a little bit later on, but yeah, here's the animation. But I want you guys to focus on the character. I also painted another version of the character where the lighting was way dark. Well, let me see what it is. Here it is. Right, but we're not gonna get into that just yet. I'm just gonna focus on the background. So there were two backgrounds. Again, it's the same drawing, but with a different lighting. And this is something fun that you can do. You can actually play with opacity either here or in an editing software. You can switch between them and look how it feels like the lighting is coming in, right? Little by little, you can see how it's coming from behind. And it works. So I could create fades from one type of lighting to another. I also animated the light, but we were going to talk about that further on. There's also scenes where I basically just did several versions of the background. So here's the character animation. Right, so he opens a bottle. The background is not extended because it wasn't needed. Yeah, we're going to get rid of the character right now. And so in this scene, these lights starting to going out like they were reflector lights, so you can hear the right. And what I did was painting several backgrounds where the lightings were disappearing, and look that it also affects the car a little bit, right? Until they are almost gone. In the next scenes, they are almost gone. So you can also work like this. I just duplicated. This is the great thing about using Clip Studio as your pipeline tool, is that I can be animating in the same software where I can be painting my backgrounds. And this you cannot do another frame-by-frame animation softwares. They don't have the tools, because Clip Studio first and foremost is an image editing software, and it's a painting and illustration software. So those tools are incredibly robust, and then added to that a timeline is just crazy, right? So we can have the whole thing. Since this was a graduation project, there were many times where I realized something was wrong with my background. So I needed to move something, I needed to repaint something. Imagine having to go to another software where I can just right here open my background folder and edit whatever I needed to edit. So that was a huge advantage for me. All right, so once I have the background set, I started, and I have the animatic. Oh, I completed the animatic by then. So we can see a little test of how the animatic compares to the opening scene to the short film. You can see the drawings were pretty rough, but it's basically there. All the ideas were there in my animatic. See, this lighting was animated in Clip Studio. We're gonna go through that. But yeah, basically just comparing how the final product looks to the animatic. Okay, so as you have noticed, this story is about a character who's after his alcoholic father's death, a young man decides to sell the last memory of him, his taxi, right? That's the story of the short film. So it's a fairly sad story, which required uh, a subtle animation, basically. So one thing that was a must for me that I could not compromise in that was I needed to be comfortable drawing in order to be able to animate comfortably. That's why I went through several animation softwares, and every single one of them let me down in terms of their brush, until I stumbled with Clip Studio Paint. And I realized it had a timeline. I tried it out, and I've never looked back. It's just wonderful. So, all right, we're gonna go through the animation process. So when you're creating a file, don't worry, we're not gonna go long into this, but you right here, creating a new file, you have the options for an animation file. So in here, you would have your frame rate, your playback time, everything you need in order to make an animation. But let's say we started with an illustration. I'm just gonna show how easy this is. Let's say I started with an illustration and we don't even have our timeline on screen. Well, in here, window, timeline, we just open this, and here's a little button that says New Timeline. At first, it can be a little daunting when you see the timeline, but I'm going to explain how it is to use it. So yeah, here you have the options for the timeline. So frame rate, 24 frames per second. I highly recommend using this, 24 frames per second. I see some people that animate using, how can I say this? They just animate and then they change the frame rate to match how fast they want the characters to move. This is not a good practice. So stick to 24 frames per second. That's the TV standard. Playback time, 240 frames. That means 10 seconds. Here we go. So at first you see, oh, nothing happened, right? So the first thing you need to do is create an animation folder. An animation folder, you can see here, is not the same as a normal folder. Here I created a folder, just you can see the difference, but the animation folder has a different configuration in it, whereas when you create a file, it names it as 1. Right, so here we create a new folder in our timeline. I'm gonna go and right click here and select my 1 number. Why is this important to stick to these numbers? Because it helps us to actually keep order keep the house clean, basically. So if you create a new layer, you're gonna see you can either create a raster layer or a vector layer. It doesn't matter. You can also work with vectors and scale them, and it works wonderfully. For now, I'm just working with raster layers. So here you go. Create a new layer, and it says 2. Create another one, 3. Why is this important? If you use this as a guide to where are your keyframes, let's say here's 2 and here's 3. Whenever you want to make a breakdown, so you want to create a new layer between 1 and 2, is going to name it 1A. So you can actually have an order to your stuff, and you already know, okay, this is my scene, this is my keyframe 1, this is my keyframe 2, and here's my breakdown, 1A. If I make another one, 1B. And I can also make another one and name it 1A1, for example. And if I make another one on top of that, it's gonna be 1A2. So you see how it goes. Why am I explaining this? Because we're gonna go into this. And now it's gonna get a little daunting. It's gonna get a little scary, but I promise you guys, it's not. Okay, this is actually a character animation. And right, this can look a little scary. But again, now you can understand. Here's 1, here's my pose 2, here's my pose 3, and that way I can know even the spacing that I have in my animation. So yeah, over here is the whole animation. I'm gonna make this smaller so we can focus on the characters. But yeah, here are our characters just merely dancing and playing guitar. Okay, so you already got the basics of how we would work on this. Of course, I'm gonna open this version. I'm gonna open the rough animation. See, at first I'm just drawing my key poses and figuring out how the movement's gonna be. Of course, this timing doesn't matter. Since right now I'm skewing through it, it looks like it's working, but it's not. It's super fast. But I'm just basically working on the poses that I'm gonna use, right? And again, I'm just using the same pipeline that I just showed you. So these are different animation folders. Just gonna close them so you can see them all together. And each one of them, you can see, this is the kid with the line of the kid. This is the mom. This is the mom's arms. I want to work with her arms separately, so I can. So it was easier for me to move the guitar, right? So yeah, this is basically what you would do. Once the animation is done, you just color it, right? Wrong. There's something else that we need to do if we're working with frame by frame animation, which is a little tedious, but it's also like the bread and butter of an animator. This is what makes it so much fun. So I will open the scene. You can see the format's a little weird. It's because we saw this scene at the start. I'm gonna turn on the background. So I drew this background using one of those Facebook like grid 360 grids, and then I did this. Let's see if I can find the scene fairly quickly. Okay, there we go. It was just to create this illusion that the camera is rotating around. So, right, the character has to keep up to that drawing, to that movement. So there's something fairly important that's happening here. Let's go here. I'm gonna turn off the highlights because right now it can look a little weird. So yeah, the key to doing something like this, again, is using keyframes. So the character can never be standing still. Even if he is standing still, he has to move a little bit, right? How did I manage to do that? Well, by using keyframes. So I drew this one, and then I drew one that's a little bit turned, and then I in between. Right? So it will feel like the character is moving. Then when he starts moving, right, all bets are off. You basically have to eyeball this, and it does get hard. So yeah, this is a really time-consuming process. But why I was showing this is because of the light guides. I'm gonna turn off everything else, but this, even the shadows. Yeah, see if we can work with this. All right, I'm gonna turn off the eye highlights. By the way, I can find everything fairly easy, not because of the names, but because of this. You can change the color of your layers over here. So that's really useful for me. So I know everything that's line is in red, highlights and shadows are blue, and guidelines are basically yellow. That's the color that I decided. You can use whatever you need, but that way I can find in every scene things fairly quickly. So again, even if the character is moving, the lighting has to stay fairly consistent, right? Imagine if the character moved this consistently, but the lighting was vibrating. It would look weird. It would look like the lighting is actually changing. So again, once you are done with a scene, you also got to go back to your keyframes and draw your guidelines for your lights and shadows. So I'm showing this scene because it's never this hard. I really made it really hard on myself on this one. But right, since the character is rotating, but the windows are not, we always, right, the lighting is going to be rotating around him. So I got to keep that into account and how it's going to change while he's rotating. So I'm going to turn on the shadows so you can see how it moves. So again, it's a lot of work that goes into such a simple scene, right? Now I'm going to turn on the highlights. Of course, the highlights right now, they are on top of the line, which is something that happened. I wanted highlights to change the color of the line, so I always drew on top. And you can use blending modes over here, and there's no problem. So I'm going to use glow. I'm going to lower the opacity. And let's put on the colors. Oh, there was another thing that I did. This was not a stupid decision, but I did made it hard on myself. I decided when I designed the characters that this line in the eye and the nose were going to be a different color, but there was not going to be a line that divided that. So what did I have to do? I also had to do a second guideline that had to remain fairly consistent. That was just the line of the nose, right? So this I also had to maintain. It does vibrate a little bit. Only so I was able to do this. But yeah, in the end, I think it was worth it. It does bring, otherwise his colors will be like blues and pretty pale. And this gave him a little bit of warmness. So yeah, this is basically the result we get. Again, we're gonna go through the final scene. Almost there. Here it is. Right, so this is the result for this, what, 3 seconds of animation. But it's so much fun. I don't know, it's great for me. All right, I want to go back to this scene to give you a bit of a tip on how to make your characters look, or your scenes look like this. So as you can see, this scene I lit entirely in Clip Studio, so this is just how it's gonna look in the end. But there's something really important here, how to make your characters look like this. We're gonna turn off all the layers and go through it, go over it. So we have the background. I started with the, see here I didn't use the color thingy, so now I'm struggling. Here we go. So we start with the character line. We animated him doing his movement, right? And then we get to the local colors, which is this. As you can see, this is the tip that I wanted to give you guys. As you can see, these colors do not match what's happening with the scene. If I just went to turn on everything else, and this is how I see many animations done. Well, we're gonna go through this later. And the highlights, this is still a little off, right? It doesn't look like he's there. Of course, the lighting is changing the colors, and yeah, this isn't multiplied, so it changes to green, the shadows and stuff. But why does this not look natural? It's because we're missing this step. Here it is. From this to this, it's fairly subtle. What did I do then, right? Okay, so this is what I did. I'm gonna delete this. So once I painted the color fill, I'm gonna highlight it so you can see it. I duplicate it. Basically, I can grab the entire animation folder, duplicate it by dragging it to a new layer, and now I have 2 color fields. And this little button is change layer color. I just click on it, and suddenly, right, everything turned to blues. But I can just basically pick any color that I want. I'm gonna go and pick, let's say this greens. Okay, so again, it still doesn't look that well, right? So we can turn this into a blending mode. Anyone that you like, you can try them out. I'm just gonna use color blending mode, and of course this is not working. But if I lower the opacity, then I can basically, I'm gonna actually turn it to 0 and start going up. And you can see how I can make my character actually blend in with the scene, because now the colors are basically contaminated, right? He is there, he is being lit by not only this light coming from the window, but that light bouncing over all of the walls. And yeah, that's what we get. Alrighty, so yeah, here's something like this would do. Okay, let's move on to, I think it's time to get onto perspective animation. So what is perspective animation? So far, I've shown you scenes where, yeah, the character's moving, but the background's standing still, right? So yeah, this was fairly fun to do, but this is character animation. What happens if we move the background? So of course, I'm not gonna, for the amount of time we have, I'm not gonna go too into detail with this, but I can tell you I used perspective animation. I'm gonna find a small video. Here it is. When I started this project, again, I wanted to know how animators, since the beginning of animation, they used perspective drawing to emulate camera movements and rotations. So this is some of the tests that I did before starting the project. I can imagine it can look a little bit choppy on your end, but yeah, here you go. For example, this. Here you can see the grid that I used, and basically what I was doing is I had this grid and I constructed the entire background, and then you can see some squares here. Then in the next frame, I redrew the entire background, but one of these tiles further towards me, right? So this, well, I moved too much, but again, it's just repeating and repeating the process over and over again. So this is the result we get. This is colored, right? But you can see how it feels like we're moving in a background. I'm going to turn on all the things that are happening here. We're even going to turn on the character. Of course, the colors are not like this. I exported everything and then mounted on After Effects for the final compositing. But yeah, here we go. Oh, I'm also missing. Oh, there we go. Right, so here's the character running. There's lighting that's being animated, and it's also to keep fairly consistent. And there we go. So there are a bunch of scenes in this short film where I basically had to rely on my perspective grid in order to build. I'm going to open several at the same time. Doesn't really matter. Okay, and this one. And finally, this one. This one's the bane of my existence. But again, it was a lot of fun to do. Where is it? Oh, this one's pretty fun too. Okay. We're gonna go through this one first. So again, every background in this short film had to take into account what kind of lens I was trying to use. So you can see here the perspective grid. It makes everything look a little bit curved, right? If you look at the final short film, you will not realize that, but it's exactly because I used this that it looks natural. If I didn't, it will look weird. It will look like everything's too perfect, right? Too straight. So again, moving the backgrounds inside of this and having to paint several parts with different colors. Let's go over this one. This was a camera distortion. So the background also moves. I use the same for the characters. See, here it is. That's why I couldn't find it. This is the bane of my existence, the car scene, the famous car scene. So I'm gonna turn on hold layers. So yeah, basically I'm gonna keep the characters like that. But yeah, I also had to draw this. So of course the characters were gonna be inside. I just had to mask them out. Yeah, right. So all of this was done using perspective grids, which I'm not sure if they are here. I probably deleted them in this scene, but yeah, in an older version they would be there. So yeah, this was the hardest part of the project for sure. I just wanted to share it with you. I do want to say that Clip Studio is perfectly able to use 3D objects, right? The options here, oh, no, never mind. I think it's over here, right? We have the materials that we can download, and there's character rigs, and there's entire scenarios that you can move with a lot of ease inside of Clip Studio. And yeah, you can download even just poses for the rigs and use them. I have not never used them, but I know it's there. There's also a pretty robust perspective tool in Clip Studio, which again, since I drew my perspective grids myself, I never used. But yeah, basically, yeah, I think that's what I want to show you guys. I hope this has been helpful for you, and that you can also see how powerful Clip Studio is as an animation tool, where you can do your entire pipeline. You can have it in a single software.
Okay, so do you want to go into questions?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go into questions.
We have so many questions.
Oh, really? Yeah,
Yeah.
I thought so.
Let's start with something you just talked about, the perspective grids. Did you make the perspective grids yourself, or like you use the one that's like for the 360 one where there's some templates online?
Yeah, I basically, like, for example, for this one, I just downloaded a 360 grid, or one, like literally for those Facebook videos. I just downloaded one and I used it, and it worked perfectly, right? Like, this is what we're seeing, and you can see it looks a little iffy how the lighting, like the shadows are on his back, and suddenly they're on, like, covering most of him. But if you look at the final scene, if I can find it quickly, there we go. It does feel like the camera is right doing that movement.
Yeah. Could you describe like how you make the camera move in Clip Studio? That was a question that came up quite a lot.
The camera move as in drawing it over and over again?
No, just because you have like the long background, and then
okay. Yeah, see,
I'm
gonna open the scene.
Yeah.
When I did the scene, there was not a tool to be able to move the camera, but right now there is. I have not used it, but there is a tool right now that can move the background.
Yeah.
So yeah, for this I just exported it and moved it somewhere else. But so this is why it's not moving. But right now, if you wanted to do it, you absolutely could be able to, because there is a tool.
Okay, so you had the whole background scene, and then you moved it in a different software to.
Yeah.
Okay, for this case. All right. Okay. Yeah. I think that's what people were asking about.
Yeah, I should have made it clear. But yeah, if you wanted to do that right now, you can. I cannot show you how because I have not used it yet, but you can.
Okay, maybe in a future webinar. Maybe
absolutely, yeah.
There was another question. Do you have very fluent animations? Do you use or like reference any type of rotoscoping?
No. Yeah, I guess I can show you. Absolutely. Yeah, I do use, like, whenever I have to do something, I don't know how it's gonna pan out.
Yeah.
There we go, right? You do use reference. But the important thing about using reference, guys, that I want to make clear is it's not about either tracing it or just going straight ahead, which means one drawing after the other. If I try to copy my reference like this, one drawing, the other, it's not going to work. The important thing is finding your key poses, right? The poses that tell the story, or the most broad movements, the what is happening. Those poses are the ones you can reference, and then you solve the animation using acceleration, deceleration, breakdowns, right? We're getting a little bit into animation, right? Like, but yeah, basically the key about using reference is not tracing it, neither just copying this drawing and then this one. That's not gonna look well. I mean, it is a type of animation. People do that, but I would rather just reference the key poses like this one, and then understand how a character runs.
Yeah. So in your process, you talked about like storyboards and lighting, but it seems you're starting with the backgrounds for most of the animations, or is it just a mixed process?
See, here's what happened. I'm going to be honest with you. I started with the backgrounds because, again, I showed you at first what my level of drawing characters was when I started this project. I was too afraid of drawing the characters, but I bit the bullet. I eventually started doing it. So it's not necessarily that you have to pre-production, then backgrounds. You can work it parallelly, or the sort of pipeline that works for you. I left the characters to the end because I was afraid of drawing them. But yeah, it's not necessarily has to be like that.
Okay. There were lots of questions about the gradient maps. Can you show again where you find those?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Let's go through one background. Let me find a scene that I really like. So this one, what a nice background. No, 1 second. I'm gonna turn it on. There we go. I'm gonna turn off the character. We don't need him. So okay, this background, right? Looks. How did I manage to paint with? How did I know this blues will work right here? Well, let's go into the background. Here's the gradient map. So again, all I did was painting this in black and white and then using a gradient map. So if I turn it off, you can see just doesn't work. The gradient maps are over here in, I believe, in layer, new correction layer, gradient map. So in here you have a lot of options, but you can either use them as template and then select yourself what you want to do. So let's use the blue sky dark, right? What's happening right now? It's turning whites into blues, and we do not want that. So I can just move this aside and add a new point and say this one's going to be white, right? Oop, or gray. Okay, white. Okay, so now it's respecting the whites. So yeah, you would basically play with this and move it around until you find something that looks like what you want. I had to fill with this a lot, but this is basically the process. I'm going to open the one that I already used so you can see how it works. But yeah, basically, I believe I used one of these sunsets and then just turned it to light blue. But yeah, I just basically decided, again, if I move this, you can see it's changing how much blue it shows. This could actually look pretty well. Yeah, it actually works pretty well. I like this. But yeah, this is basically the process of using a gradient map. It's important, guys, that I want you to understand. Yeah, I'm going to show you something fairly quick because it's something that I get asked a lot. A pretty short story. When I did this study, this is from J.C. Leyendecker, and this is a painting study that I did. I didn't use a color picker, so I just looked at his image and trying to paint the same color he used, and I was amazed at how he used blues and reds and purple, like every single color, and it still looks so well, right? So I thought, yeah, this guy must be a genius. But then I found the truth about color by accident, which was I turned it into black and white, and I realized something. The values actually work, even though I was copying colors without using color picker and just thinking about the color. When I turned it into black and white, I realized the values are already doing the whole work. So I realized that color is not necessarily about color. It's more about the values. If your values are working up front, then you can use whatever color you want and it's going to work. And I tried applying that in my short film and I realized, yeah, effectively you can use, like, I go through a ton of different colors in my short film, and if my values are working, it never looks weird. Of course, it's surreal, right? Nothing would be this green or blue, but it just looks beautiful in animation. So the key thing that I want you to take about color is it's not necessarily about the color, it's more about the values. Your values working up front, and then you can use whatever color you want.
Speaking of colors and the ones that you used for expressing moods, like how much experience did you have with like cinematography and stuff like that when you started? Did you have to do the research, or was that part of your studies?
I'm an avid movie watcher. I do love watching movies, but I definitely had to study like everything else, like every skill. You have to study the fundamentals. I really recommend this book, which is, well, you probably have heard of it, but it's called Framed Ink. It's a great introduction to uh, composition for storytelling, regardless if it's movies or story, it's gonna work for you. And yeah, I highly recommend this book. I read it from cover to cover, and yeah, it saved my life basically. But yeah, I did go through. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you notice, like, when you're watching movies now, that you see what you used yourself in your own work?
Absolutely, yeah, it's pretty fun. You know what's been happening that's funny? Sometimes I enjoy the animation that I watch that I enjoy even more, but the ones that I don't like that much, I don't know, it's like my emotions have become way stronger about animation. So that's something very fun that happened.
So it's like, the scene would look so much better if it were like a different
Yeah,
color.
I don't want to be mean, but basically, yeah.
So you have like a very traditional approach to animation in terms that it's frame by frame. How much time do you usually take for one frame? Can you tell?
It varies when you're if you're starting a production, one frame right can take a while to get it working. But once you've worked with the same character, for example, the last scenes that I animated, I did like 2 scenes in a day, and I know that's a lot of animation.
Yeah.
I already knew how the character worked super quick, right? So you get faster with time. That's something I do want to tell to people who are just getting started animation. Don't get discouraged. Yes, at first it's gonna be hard, it's gonna be terrible, your drawings are gonna look like doo-doo, but it's mathematical. There's nowhere to go but up. The more you do it, the better you're gonna get. It's literally what's gonna happen. So yeah, you're just gonna go through it.
Did you use the onion skin function at all in this?
Yes, absolutely. I'm gonna show it
That'd be
quickly.
great.
Let's see. Yeah. So the onion skin, let's go to the character line. It's over here. This button, enable onion skin, and it's a lifesaver. It's the only way that I could like correctly in between this and this, right? So I can see, I'm gonna turn off everything else, right? Because it's pretty hard to see what I'm talking about. But yeah, it's this drawings, basically blue is the last frame and green is the next one. And yeah, it definitely helped me to be able to know. Again, I've solved the main poses, which are the round numbers, 3, 4, 5, and then I did in-betweens. This is a fairly easy one. You can see everything just drawn in the middle, but it doesn't have to be that way always. You have to think about spacing. I know that's a little bit of animation theory, but yeah, basically what if you put your drawings together more closer together, it's gonna either decelerate or accelerate, and if you put them farther apart, it's gonna move faster. So you gotta take that into account. We humans always move with acceleration and deceleration. So that's gonna make your drawings, you can see sometimes when he moves broadly, the distance between drawings is fairly big, and suddenly when he's getting to a keyframe, they start getting closer and closer and closer until it stays still. And then it goes again.
How did you go about sound in your animation?
Sound, for the music, I am a musician also, and I composed the music for my short film, but sound I had to outsource. And this is an important lesson that I learned, is you cannot be the master of everything. Sometimes you, as a director, want to do everything, especially if it's your graduation short film, but I did outsource. I worked with the great Florian Kalmer. He has worked with Disney, with other short films from CalArts. And, you know, he's incredible, an incredible sound designer. He was super gracious about his time, and he liked the project and he got on board, and yeah, it was a wonderful experience.
So did you finish the animation and then added the music later and the narration?
Since he works with animation, he understood that things are on a process. So yeah, he worked with me while I was still animating some stuff. But yeah, every maquette or version that he sent was just spot on. It was everything I imagined and even more. So I recommend, guys, that if there's something that you are not too sure you're going to do a good job about it, look for someone that can do a good job. You're also helping them out. And yeah, it's a fun experience to work with other people.
Yeah. Looking at you just zoomed in really a lot into your drawing. Do you use raster layers for your drawing, right? Or do you use vector layers at all?
Yeah, some of them are vectors, some of these are raster, but yeah, some other scenes are in vector layers. Okay. I know we're going to be wondering why, but again, I'm going to be honest with you. At first, I didn't know there was vector layers. And I did most, like 90% of the short film in raster. And yeah, it was. I recommend using vectors because I'm going to quickly just show you the difference. I'm going to do a line, and this is something I wanted you to realize. Can you tell which one is which? It's impossible. They look the same, but the difference is if I scale this is the vector layer. Doesn't matter what I do, it's never gonna get pixelated, but the raster layer does. Now, one thing you gotta take into account when using vector layers is you cannot use them as fill. See, this is not working anymore. You cannot fill, like, if I'm gonna color inside this character with the bucket tool, I do have to use a bitmap, a raster layer. So vectors are only for lines, but that's not a problem because you use your colors are in another layer. So anyways, you're gonna do it in another layer. Just this one, make it raster, and you can do the line with vector.
Okay. Do you have a favorite pen for outlining?
See, this is the funnest thing. Everyone always tells me, what pen are you using? It looks so good. I'm using the default G pen. I've literally never touched it since I bought the program. I just turned it on, I started drawing, and I thought, okay, this is perfect. This everything I need. Like, look at this, guys. I can start. Look at how much control I have. It just, I cannot put it in words, but you gotta try it out, and you're gonna see how this is definitely the best pen out there. There's just no, hands down, no competition.
Okay, we need to slowly wrap it up, but we have a few more questions. For you personally, what is the most fun part about creating animations? Like, which part of the process do you enjoy most?
Oh, definitely. I do animation because it's my way of getting my stories to people, but I do not consider myself an artist. I consider myself a storyteller. So definitely writing. I know it's it's like the fastest thing, and it's what comes at first, and there's a lot of work, but is the promise of seeing people experience my stories. That's what keeps me going. And just the storytelling part is what's most fun for me.
Okay. So what do you think makes a good story? Personally,
definitely something that this is something that I experienced while making this short film. There were times, and not always, obviously I'm not gonna cry every time I see one of my scenes, but there were times where I was working in my project and I felt my short film like I wasn't the director, but like I was the audience, and it happened not organically. I just felt the emotion. And it doesn't mean that I started crying uncontrollably, right? But it's just that moment where it just works. The music and the lighting and the characters moving, and it just worked. And I think that's the key. When you are directing a project, when you're making your own stories, if you can feel what you want the audience to feel, then your project is going to work. If you cannot feel it, it's worth working a little bit more on it, because yeah, it's highly likely that they are not going to feel it either. You're going to be you have to be your #1 fan for your projects.
So you get really excited if you have a story that you really like.
Yeah.
How do you practice storytelling? Like, you can look at things that other people have done, and
you can study. There are a lot of books and fundamentals on it, and articles, and you can read on that. But the best way is just getting out there and do it. How do you know if it worked? By showing it to other people. And I know that process just it's really hard, because when you show a drawing and someone tells you, oh, that drawing is pretty crappy, you're like, oh, well, maybe he's right. But when they tell you your story is pretty crappy, it's like they are insulting your baby, right? It's pretty harsh. But we gotta understand, we are not our work. We are a different entity, right? Our work is our work, we are we. And we gotta take it as it is, as feedback, right? Some feedback is not that useful, so you can disregard it. Some feedback wants to make you grow, and you can take it as such, as a tool to grow. So yeah, a lot of times I went through my story with other people, and they pointed out things that I thought, oh my God, I'm so stupid. How did I even, like, the story wasn't working several times in the process. But yeah, I'm glad I did. I show it to other people, and I grew by doing it.
Did you get feedback from your mentors, or did you also put it like online or something?
Basically anyone that I could trust, because this is something important. You gotta build your own connections that you trust. It's not about putting it everywhere and just showing everyone. You actually want to show it to people whose opinion you care about, because you know they want what's best for you, and especially they will be honest. You don't want people just telling you, oh, that's great, yeah, keep going, woo, because that, I mean, that's great and it feels our self-esteem, but that doesn't help you grow. So yeah, I reached out to people I want to know what they think about it, both online and in my social group. And yeah, those are the people I trusted to help me develop this story.
Okay. All right. I think that's also some very good advice that we can close on. So thank you very much for the presentation. That was very insightful. I think we've all learned a lot.
Thank you, Joanna. Thank you, Mario. Thank you so much for this opportunity. It was great. It was a lot of fun. And I hope you guys, thank you for being here. I hope you guys got value out of this. And I want to see your own animations. You know where to find me? Send them over. I want to see what you guys are working on.
So yeah, thank you so much, Manuel. Everybody's really inspired. I'm pretty sure everybody will start using the timeline and working on their own animation.
Yeah, get to it.
We have people from all over the world, people who are watching it in the morning, afternoon, or really late at night, and they are all really happy to see your webinar. Yeah, and thank you for inspiring us.
Thank you guys for this opportunity, seriously.
So before we go, I just want to share one last information with you. Please learn more about Clip Studio Paint in clipstudio.net/n and graphicsly.com. As I mentioned the webinar is being recorded, so we will upload it to our YouTube channel, Graphicsly. It will also be on Celsius Web and Clip Studio, the latest YouTube channel. And as I mentioned on the chat, if you guys want to learn more about animation principles, you can check our blog on our website, graphicsly.com blog. There is one really interesting article about the 12 principles of animation written by Liz Stanley. And also for more information about Manuel and all of his projects and the latest news about what he's doing in Clip Studio Paint, please follow him on Manu Mercurial Instagram and Manu Mercurial Twitter. So with that, thank you so much, Manuel.
All right, thank you guys.
And also thank you so much, Joanna, and to everybody who is still here with us, thank you so much, and we hope to see you on our next webinar. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.